Hey folks, how are we doing? Alex here for Character Strength and Conditioning. Today we are going to talk about the LSUS Weightlifting program. I'm going to give you a full review, pros, cons. We're going to break a bunch of stuff down. We're going to talk about the background, Kyle Pierce, the background of the program, the LSUS program in review. We're going to sort of look at the structure, how it works. We're going to explain it in detail, look at the workouts. We are going to talk about some key variations. There's a powerlifting variation and a 4-day variation. We are then going to go into pros of the program, cons of the program, some key FAQs, and then we're going to come to a conclusion on if you should use the program, is the program right for you, when you might want to use it, all that good stuff. Let's give it a little scroll down. If you are new to the channel, by the way, so I started Character Strength and Conditioning as a coaching business. Basically, I was getting sick of the bullshit that I keep seeing in the industry. The content that I generally see is pretty poor, and I thought, why not make some of it myself? Why not make better quality content, draw my background as a professional strength and conditioning coach, as a weightlifting tutor and educator, something that I've been in for about a decade, and give you guys some proper useful information that you can actually use to make informed training decisions and make proper progress. Let's jump into it. Let's hit this thing. Let's actually hit the ground running. So the LSUS Weightlifting Review. Everything that you see on screen, I'm drawing from an article that I've written in detail. I'll link it down in the comments for you later as well. LSUS Weightlifting Review. See a picture, I've got Kendrick Farris up there, really famous American weightlifter. So the background, Dr. Kyle Pierce and the program. So LSUS, like LSU Shreveport Weightlifting, Louisiana State University Shreveport, or LSUS, it's like a well-known sports university, right? So strong sports pedigree. It's one of the few unis in the US actually to offer like scholarships for weightlifters, which is pretty cool. One of the only places, I don't think anywhere in the UK does either, really, so that's pretty cool. The program's headed up the weightlifting program by Dr. Kyle Pierce. He's a professor in kinesiology and health science, USA Weightlifting Hall of Fame inductee, really knows his shit. He's a knowledgeable dude, so the program has a good pedigree, right? Also, from interviews and from everyone that you chat to that's worked with him, a pretty chill guy, which is great, right? So the LSU program, the structure of the LSU program, right? It's born out of research between Dr. Mike Stone and Dr. Kyle Pierce, who published some landmark papers on weightlifting program design. These are some really cool papers. I really recommend you get the chance. If you get the chance, read through them. But basically, it is a 4-block training program. What I've done is I've tried to get this sort of here for you. It's a big ass program. To try and walk you through it, I'll do the best that I can, but it's not the simplest program in the world. So I'm going to walk you through sort of what it's structured as. It has 1, 2, 3. It's got 4 blocks. So block 1, 2, 3, and a taper. Your block 1 is like a 10s block. Block 2 is a 5s block. Block 3 is a 3s block, and then it's followed up by a taper, which uses sort of doubles and singles really. It is divided up by 5 training days per week. And all lifts are usually going to be based around a top set or a rep max and then back off work. So if you look at block 1, for every single lift, you're basically going to hit a 10 rep max and then do 2 by 10 at 90% of that. That's going to be your structure. So there's a lot of regular maxing on this bad boy. Day 1, it's essentially a push day. You'll have back squat, push press, bench press, lunge, military press. Day 2 is a pull day, so you'll have high hang power snatch, deadlift, RDL, shrug, bent row, pull-ups. Day 3 is essentially day 1 again, but it's just everything's performed at 10% less weight. Day 4 is very close to day 2 again, but now it's got some clean variations and it's performed within 10% of your day 2 weight. And then day 5 is a snatch and clean specific one, so it's all about snatches, clean and jerks from the floor, lifted that little bit heavier. And what you see is overall progression through the program. The volume gets lower and lower and lower. I'm trying to think, you're looking from here, aren't you? The volume is going to get lower. The intensity is going to get higher. So it's got this classic linear periodization feel, and you get slightly more specific as it gets towards the end of the program. So that's it in a nutshell. That is LSUS. High volume, strength training, lots of lifting to maxes. What I'm going to do, for simplicity, right, is I'm going to link a spreadsheet. So there's a spreadsheet linked in the article. I'll put a spreadsheet down in the description below if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening anywhere else, maybe on Spotify or elsewhere, I will link it in the show notes. So you'll hopefully be able to have this program. If you're going to run this yourself, just use the spreadsheet and download it. Let it auto-calculate everything for you. Don't try and do it all yourself. It's just really like a mathsy pain in the ass. It's a massive spreadsheet, so it'll save you a lot of time. All right. Let's explain some of this stuff. So it's got this classic periodization model. Oh my God, speaking today. So it means you've got really high volumes and then lower intensity, and then we're going to end up with much lower volumes and much higher intensity, right? So we've gone through that as a whole. You've got days 1 and 3 are your push days, days 2 and 4 are your pull days, day 5 is your weightlifting focus. Progression over the program, again, is just classic linear. The weights get heavier, the volume gets lower. That's pretty much it. After you finish the program, you can then use new maxes to recalculate your second run through. There's no deloads programmed into this. I will say there's no, at least in the program as written, there are no official deloads programmed in, which is something we're going to discuss later, how that might, what's the implications of that might be for your training. Now, if all this seems like a load of stuff that you just can't really get your head around at the minute, or you don't fancy looking up different programs, reviewing them, doing all this, what I've done is I've created just a 13-week classic weightlifting program. It's evidence-based, it cuts out the fluff, it just gives you no filler, no fluff, the exact sets and reps that I think would be a really good bang for your buck, a classic, intermediate, classic weightlifting program. If it's something that interests you, I'll link that down below. Might be worth a shout if you're looking for a reliable program that you know is just going to get you where you want to go. Modifying LSUS, okay? So there's a few ways that you can modify the LSUS weightlifting program. You can do, there's like a 4-day variation that just splits it down a little bit. In that variation, days 1 and 3 remain the same. Days 2 and 4 remain mostly the same, except that now you're going to split your weightlifting volume between variations and classic lifts. And then, so if like a 5-day program had 3 to 5 sets of high hang power snatch, you're probably now going to do something like 2 sets of high hang power snatch and then 2 sets of snatch from the floor. So it's almost like you're sort of combining some of your day 5 work with some of your day 2 and 4 work, just blending it all together a little bit to make it shorter. There's also low volume LSUS, aka what I would call sensible LSUS. There's no official lower volume of it, but there are 2 options that I can think of that I've drawn from my own coaching experience and from some like Reddit and weightlifting forum threads back when weightlifting forums was still alive and kicking. Option 1 is you run the 5-day LSUS as normal, but you only do 1 or 2 sets of each exercise instead of 3 sets. That's an easy way to drop your volume. Option 2 is you run the 5-day LSUS program, but you drop 1 or 2 exercises per day. So some examples of how you might edit this, if I move my cursor over here, if this is our original, this is a version with the sets dropped. So you can see instead of 3 sets, everything's moved to 2 sets. And if you look at the exercises removed option, what I've done is instead of having the military press as well and the lunge, both of those 2 have been dropped. So you still get some leg work, still get some upper body work, but you've dropped some of the extras. There are 2 ways that you can reduce the volume on this program if you're someone that knows you don't respond well to insanely high volumes, right? Last variation we're probably going to talk about, LSUF for powerlifting. Can actually work really well as a powerlifting program. All you do is you take out your Olympic weightlifting exercises and you take out almost all of your overhead work. So what you end up with is sort of like a squat bench, military press kind of thing, or like deadlift, RDL, shrug row pull-up kind of days. You just take out all your weightlifting work, run the same, 10s, 8s, 5s, 3s progressions, use all the same progressions, just take your weightlifting work out, and it actually works pretty solid as a powerlifting program. Now, let's hit it. Let's hit the meat of what we want to talk about. Let's see what we're getting at. What do I think of the pros of the LSUS program, right? Well, I think it has a solid evidence-based structure. I think the heart of LSUS is that it uses this classic linear periodization. So it has 10s, then 5s, then 3s. It's a time-proven recipe for strength progress with plenty of good literature to back it up. Fantastic. Love it. What else do I like? Well, the program also has a bunch of conversation around it, okay? But since it's a fairly popular program, plenty of people have tried it and discussed it, which means that all you really need to do is you Google LSUS Reddit, LSUS program results, type those into Google, and you're going to get plenty of experiences, plenty of people talking about what they liked about it, what they didn't, what they might do to improve on it, like variations they've made. That's really good. So if you're about to approach this program, I see that as a real positive. Now, with all that said, I do think there are some real cons, and I think these are things that I've experienced both myself and through lifters and through looking at other people's experiences. First up, the program just has way too much volume. And when I say too much volume, I mean fucking way too much volume. LSUS has 75 working sets per week, okay? If you compare that to strength programs like the Texas Method, for instance, they have 33. If you compare it to the last week, the final most built-up week of the Catalyst Athletics starter program, that has 52 sets. More work isn't always better, guys, all right? So It's just a recipe for burnout. There's so much work in this program. I think if you are maybe someone on the smaller side, someone that maybe lifts a little bit lighter, you might survive it. I think if you're a bigger, stronger person, it's gonna hurt you. It's gonna be tough, and I've experienced it myself. There are also way too many rep max lifts. You know, look, I love a good max out day, I really do, but LSUS has you maxing out every single lift on days 1 or 2. Every single friggin' lift. That's 11 exercises, all taken to a max every single week, and they're not small exercises. They're like back squats and snatches and cleans and RDLs. It's friggin' systemically brutal. It just creates loads of extra physical and mental fatigue with no additional benefit. If you look at the literature that's actually been written now, like the systematic reviews, the meta-analyses of this stuff, Davies and Grigich, I can't pronounce his name, but I'm going to say Grigich, from 2022, they've each found that training to failure, it offers no benefits compared to training with 1 to 3 reps in reserve. That is mad, right? We have this idea that going super, super hard all the time is a great idea. It offers no strength training benefits, but a bunch of extra fatigue. So bear that in mind. It's not always a good thing. This program is pretty old now. It's sort of showing its age, and science and literature has moved on. Sports science has moved on. We should listen to it. Weightlifting movements in the program, another negative. They're not practiced enough. One of the biggest weightlifting program mistakes that I've written about is failing to provide enough frequency of practice for the weightlifting movements. I'll try and link a little a video up here somewhere in the tab or down in the show notes if you're listening to this. For optimal performance, you want to be performing the lifts themselves or close variations of the snatch and the clean and jerk multiple times per week, ideally 3 or more times. But on LSUS, you only snatch and clean from the floor 1 to 2 times per week, not for that much volume, and when variations are used, they're often not close variations, you know. A high hang power snatch is a pretty far off variation compared to a snatch from the floor because you've moved it up not just to a hang but to a power, so they're quite far removed from the ideal specificity. Next up, the weekly structure, the microcycle, is just poor for recovery, okay? A well-designed training schedule allows for stress followed by recovery. Typically, that might be a heavy day, followed by a lighter day, a heavy day, a lighter day, so you get this natural ebb and flow. With LSUS, what you end up with is 5 moderate to heavy days, each with heavy actual loading, and at least 3 have to be performed consecutively. It's just a recipe for pretty shit recovery, for an increased injury risk. It's just not ideal. There are plenty of ways that you could structure your weekly training that would allow for a better ebb and flow of recovery, and LSUS just doesn't accommodate that. So look, I'm going to go down. I'm going to scroll to my final bit, my review. Does LSUS work? Is it good? And I'm afraid this is the tough bit for me, but I think on balance, I wouldn't recommend LSUS to most people, all right? The volumes are too high. There are too many rep maxes, there is not enough practice of the weightlifting movements, and the weekly schedule is pretty poor for recovery. And like, sure, you could make a bunch of adjustments, but at that point, you might as well just design yourself a better program from scratch, right? And yes, I know some people have gotten really strong on the program, but I think they could have gotten just as strong on the Texas method, for instance, by doing literally half the work. I think, in my mind, one of the big reasons that LSUS works is because of the training environment, okay? It's such a hype training environment where everyone's training together, pushing each other hard. They've got a really family-like community. Everyone describes Kyle Pearce as almost like a father figure that's watching out for them, that's looking them. So I think on the daily basis, I think there'll be lots of coach-led and lifter-led changes. So there'll be lots of natural coach-led auto-regulation. Sets and volumes might adjust on the fly a lot. But we don't get to see that, okay? If we're just looking at this program as it's written on paper and posted on the internet, we're only getting the practical, we're getting the paper of it, but we're not getting the day-to-day, the nuance, the coaching element of that, and I think that can't be replicated. So if you're looking at LSUS as a program on paper, it's not great, okay? It's not, but I think the LSUS weightlifting program itself, been in the weightlifting hall, working with those athletes and those coaches, night and day difference, okay? So I think that's probably the key distinction that I want to draw there. Right, and then the last one. It's on topic, and I think it's something that's worth chatting about because I get asked this a lot. Kendrick Farris and LSUS addressing the topic. So Kendrick Farris, if you don't know, was considered back in the day one of America's best weightlifters. He placed 8th and 10th in the 2008 and 2012 Olympics respectively, was the Pan Am champ. 2016 he broke the US clean and jerk record with a lift of 209 kilos. Phenomenally strong dude. Trained with Kyle Pearce basically his entire lifting career. So you could conclude that maybe LSUS helped to create one of the US's base lifters. I don't mean any disrespect or offense by this, but I would bet good money that by the end of his career, strict adherence to the LSUS program probably hampered Kendrick's progress. It might have even squandered his potential. And I know that sounds mean, I know that sounds tough, but Kendrick famously had amazing strength in the 5 and 10 rep schemes. I'll see if I can link some videos around here below. I'll pop them down in the description or the show notes. This dude would be insane in the 10s and 5s, but his singles and doubles were always lacking in comparison. The same as his raw strength, it always exceeded his snatch and clean and jerk numbers significantly. So don't get me wrong, he always snatched and clean and jerked a lot. But if you would look at his raw strength in his squat, his deadlift, his presses, his benches, anything like that, if you compared that to other lifters with similar numbers, they would be snatching and clean and jerking just significantly more than him. So I think that's just a direct result of simply not practicing the comp lifts enough or at a high enough intensity. I just have to imagine if Kendrick, at least for the last maybe 5 years of his career, had trained either with or in a system like Dave's at Cal Strength, or with maybe Greg and Amy Everett at Catalyst Athletics, with someone so data-driven like Spencer Arnold at like Power and Grace, there's very little doubt in my mind that he would have lifted more, potentially even medaling at the World or Olympic stage. I think he had a phenomenal amount of potential, and I think LSUS, it got him incredibly strong. I just think that some of his finer speed strength qualities and his technical work, it did need work, and it didn't quite get there. And look, of course, this is just my opinion. I mean, look, there's far more qualified coaches to talk on it, but that's just where I land. So when people say LSUS must be good because of Kendrick, that might be my response. All right. What I'm going to do, I'm going to finish off with some quick frequently asked questions. I'm realizing this is getting on to be a long video, but if you've stuck around this long, I'm assuming you're a massive weightlifting geek like I am, and you're just loving this shit, right? So is LSUS good for beginners? Nah, not at all. Super high volume. I would say beginners just need to focus on regular practice with very light technique drills and simple strength progressions. So it's not a beginner program. Is it appropriate for a masters lifter? Again, not at all. It's too much volume, too much intensity for a masters lifter. It's built for 18 to 21-year-old college students with ideal recovery situations. You know, it's built for lifters that basically just eat, sleep all day, do 2-3 hours work. It ain't built for people like me that have, you know, got a kid or have got, you know, 8-9 hours of work to do it. It's not happening. It's not happening, all right? So it's not a masters program. Can you use it for powerlifting? Yes, it's solid. Crack on. Use LSUS for powerlifting as much as you want. When do you max out on LSUS? So technically, you'll be maxing out multiple days per week, doing 10 or 5 or 3 rep maxes. If you're talking about hitting 1 rep maxes, then what you'll do is you can follow the peaking block, and then you can add something like a 1-week taper. Then you could either test your maxes at the end or go into a competition. So that's an option you've got there. Then all I want to talk about is LSUS good for muscle building? Well, both yes and no. The sheer volume of work on the program is going to help you build some muscle, so if you're looking to get stacked in the off season, it's not a terrible idea, but it also builds a bunch of fatigue. So if hypertrophy is your goal, there are smarter ways to do it. I've actually written specifically a weightlifting plus bodybuilding program. Phasic structure, periodized really nicely, more sensible volumes, won't grind you to dust. I'll link it down there somewhere in the notes or in the show notes or in the description. Have a look at that if that's something you're interested in. Beyond that, I think that is pretty much all that I wanted to talk about today. Next steps, if you think that LSUS sounds like a good plan for you, then give it a try. If you're a sucker for punishment and you think that you want to give it a whirl, give it a go. I would say try it if you're someone that knows you can recover very, very fast. Get in the gym and do it. If not, pick something else that suits you better. You've got programs on my sites, but you've also got fantastic sources from Spencer Arnold, from Catalyst Athletics have a bunch of great programs. Cal Strength have programs, okay? You've got loads of options that I'd probably recommend above this. If you want more training tips, workouts, any more programs, feel free to join my mailing list. And again, if you're looking for me to write you maybe out a custom program, or even to work with me one-to-one in a weightlifting coaching capacity to look at your lifts, draw up your programming, offer you technical feedback and that one-to-one support, then I'll try and drop some links down below, get in touch, and we can sort that out. That is it for today. If you've stuck around this long, do me a solid, hit the little like button, maybe hit the little subscribe notification bell, because I'll be releasing more videos and reviews just like this one. And if you've got any questions, any comments about the topic, about LSUS, or maybe just any programs you want me to review next, drop them down in the comments, or drop me a quick suggestion and I'll get right on them. That will do for today, folks. Thanks for sticking around for the whole length of this bad boy. It's been a nice long video, and I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.